So I'm out here in my yard in search of this bumblebee. I'm calling a hummingbee, right? Hummingbee, because it has this long stigma, nose, right? Beak for sucking is really long. Equivalent to me, it's probably about the size of my arm to my body, right? That's how big it is to the bee. It's really noticeable. And he loves the nectar in right here, the nectar in these blueberry bushes right here, these nectar. And I saw him yesterday, but I scared him off this morning. I ran in, I grabbed my iPad to come out and try to catch him, and he's gone. But I want you to think about nectar and pesticides. That's my message today, is nectar and pesticides. Where does nectar come from? It's pretty obvious. Nectar comes from the flower. Well, the flower makes the nectar in order to attract bees, and this is a very specialized bee, obviously a very important bee, because it's the only pollinator so far that I've seen, and there's only been one. It's not like there's been a bunch. He's not competing. This is one little guy doing the work, doing very important work for me, because without him I won't have blueberries, right? So he's very important to me, and I'm sorry that I scared him off. But these little, the blueberry has a little teapot, right? Really nice little pots of nectar that holds in there, for them to reach in. He's got a perfectly long nose to reach in there and get it. But, I did an experiment, and I'll get back to what I was talking about water, right? Water is so important because ultimately plants need water to produce nectar. They need water to produce leaves. They need water to produce their stems. They need water for everything. And water is so important to a plant, and some plants, as you know, won't grow in dry areas. So water, and as soon as you put water down, you'll notice plants will shoot up. Okay, so think about these pesticides. Now, these pesticides are known as systemic, and most people don't realize systemic. They think, oh, neonics and new pesticides, it's new. They're systemic. Systemic means water soluble. When you hear systemic, I want you to think water soluble. Systemic pesticide, water soluble pesticides. And ultimately, these water soluble pesticides are consumed by these plants. They're consumed. So they're not on the surface as the traditional, how pesticides used to be. They're actually consumed into the plant. And here's a little worm. This is a little worm guy. This is a little worm guy. Look at this guy. He's a nice little guy. He's like got lost. He came out. We'll put him under here. Put him in here. You gotta go in here. Put him in my yard. I don't know what he was doing in my driveway. Maybe it's warmer here or something. It's a nice sized worm. He'll figure it out. So these systemic pesticides basically become water soluble, so they get dispersed in the water. The plant drinks it, and then the plant basically puts it into its nectar. And then the poor little bee that I'm trying to capture comes in and drinks. And what does the bee do? Well, he does a couple things. One, he's drinking himself. Two, he's storing it for if he's a social bee, right? And three, if he's a solitary bee, he's going to put some in making his child, I believe. I know they put pollen. I wonder if they store nectar. Well, I know bumblebees put nectar. They make these little, honey pots, right? They call them honey pots. But if they're a social bee, which we're more concerned about, they will turn around and feed this nectar to their brood and to their queen. And this nectar, guess what? If it's anywhere near a farm, that farm runoff has gone into your stream. Your bees have gone and started drinking. They don't even need to go on the farm. You need to look at water. You need to ask yourself, basically, the water. Where are places my bee can get water, and what is their hazard level, right? Because the closer they are to some farm, the more likely that water is contaminated. And all you need to do is look at the water. You can see stuff's not growing in it and everything else because of the pesticides. I've done lots of videos on that in the past, showing you really disgusting water. So ultimately, it's important for you to understand that it isn't pesticides like where bees are landing on them, and that's kind of the argument. These oh well, bees, the pesticides absorbed into the plant, the bees can't get to it. Well, it's not that. It's the runoff. Most of the pesticides run off into the nearby water. They get into that water, and that bees will either drink from that water, or in the case of you gathering that water and putting on your plants, now guess what? You're just indirectly putting pesticides into the nectar of the bee. So that's my little talk today.